Hello there and welcome to Folk-a-Dilly Tales. Every week we will be here to tell you some crazy stories, some amazing poems accompanied by some fantastic songs. My name is John Hales and I will be your host. This week, Chris Richardson is back to tell you the story of the Enchanted Mill.
And there was a miller and his young son. And the young son loved nothing more than to lie on the banks of the meadow and look up and hear the sails of the mill swish by. And he heard the sound of the wind in the stalks of the wheat where he lay. And he loved to hear the sound of the farmers talking and negotiating with his father over the cost of the wheat that they would mill. But young boys turn into young men, just as wheat in the fields ripen in the sun. And as he grew, he listened more to his father, and he saw more the problems that his father had with that mill. He saw that there were gaps in the sails. He saw that the cap was beginning to rot under the peeling paint. And he saw that the millstone had worn to the point where it could be sharpened only a few more times. And he heard how his father pleaded with the farmers for a little more coin, for the flour that he was producing was coarse and full of grit now the mill was aging. But still, the time came when the old miller would hand on the mill to his son. And he said to his son as he was lying in his last bed, he said, "My son, I give this to you, for this is all that I have had. But I fear that you will be the last in our family to mill." And with that he passed. And days turned to weeks, and weeks turned to months, and the seasons continued to turn. And Lammas came around. And it would soon be time for the farmers to bring that wheat to the son that was, the miller who was now. And it would be time for him to do the best that he could. But he went out one night, just on Lammas Eve. He went to the edge of the woods where he would sit and think. But just as he began to think, he heard a sound of high voices.
"Come on, Cloggy, I'll race you to our clearing. Beat you there."
And he looked. He peeked over the top of the grass, and he saw a most curious sight. He saw the sight of 3 Suffolk fairies, Pharisees as they were known. One in a little singer's waistcoat. One was wearing clogs, and one held a fiddle to his shoulder. And Fiddler said to Singer,
"Why don't you sing us something? Something a little more jaunting."
"No, I cannot do that. My tummy is rumbling. It is far too empty for me to sing."
And so Singer said to the one with the clogs,
"Cloggy, why don't you dance for us something that will brighten our spirit?" No, I've had so little to eat. I have no energy to stand, let alone dance."
So Clogs turned to Fiddler and said,
"But play us something, Fiddly, fast and sweet, that will give us more energy."
"No, I cannot find it within myself. My hunger is too great."
Oh, if only those humans would remember the old times and the old ways, and how we would help each other out and feed each other and provide for us with good wares.
And then the sunlight came over the hill, And suddenly, when the miller turned back, he saw that the Pharisees were gone. But he returned back to the mill, and he took what little grain, milled grain and flour that he still had, and he baked it in the little oven at the back of the mill. And he took those small cakes and breads that next morning, and he laid them out at the edge of the woodland where he'd seen the Pharisees the night before. And this time, just as the sun was getting close to rising, once more he heard the sound of little voices and squeaks of delight as they pulled the bread and cakes apart and began to feast.
Gosh, this is delicious.
Soon he could hear the Pharisees and the little singer's waistcoat begin to burst into a little song. Soon he could hear the fiddler strike up and play a tune alongside. And then he heard the little clippity-clock as the one with the clogs began to dance. And when they had finished, they said,
It is so good that we have found someone who remembers us. Now, wherever that miller is who brought these treasures to us, he should know that every Lammas Eve, if he brings us such delights, then we will repay his kindness and help him. But he should also know that the secrets of the Pharisees are just that, and it will be black disaster for any that spill them.
And so the miller went back to his mill. And that night when he slept, he swore that he could hear the sound of little tip-tap hammer blows or little sawing noises. But he couldn't be sure. But then when the morning came, he looked, and the mill was like it had been repaired completely that night. The sails were patched, the timbers of the cap were fixed and newly painted. The fantail swung that cap around soundlessly in the wind, and the millstone, that millstone that had looked so old and worn, now looked like freshly cut French stone, ready to grind the grain of the year. And soon the farmers began to arrive. And the first flour that the miller produced from these stones was so white and pure that they marvelled at it, and he was able to command a good price. And word began to spread all that season that here was a miller that could produce the finest, the sweetest, the whitest flour. And the miller began to grow wealthy. Again, days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, and months to seasons, and the years turned. And the miller became a very wealthy man. And he too had a son. And he too looked at him and he thought, this is who I wish to pass my mill on to. And that son too would lie in the meadow and look up at the mill and dream, this is what I want to be. And as the days passed, he too grew. And it came to that time when the miller, who had been the son, has then been the miller, and now was the old miller. He knew that the time had come to pass everything on to his son. He had passed him all the skills he had of milling wheat. But he had never yet told him the story of the Pharisees, and how every Lammas Eve he would take little offerings of bread and cake to them at the wood's edge. And he turned to his son and he said, there is one last thing that I must tell you. And so he told them that secret. He told him the secret of the Pharisees. He told him the secret that he had sworn that he would never tell. And that night there was a great storm. A great storm, and a single bolt of lightning hit the tower. And the flour within it ignited, and the windmill was burnt to the ground. and never was any sign of the miller and his son found. And those that came to try to rebuild that mill, the mill that had produced the finest, the whitest, the sweetest flour, for every time they built, a brick would fall off the wall, the millstone would crack, or the timbers for the cap would begin to warp. And so, that is the story of the Enchanted Windmill, and why you should never break the word of the Suffolk Pharisees.
The Windmill, the Miller, and the Fairies. Across the broadlands where the creatures come alive and run around at night, there stands an old flour mill, its ruins tall against the sky. Here, so people say, great flour was made, remarkable and of the highest grade. And the old man would work hard, from dusk till the first light of dawn. And the wee folk would come to call, sprinkling fairy dust on it all. And they made him promise, don't speak, as you can't tell a soul. There will be consequences. This you should know. The village prospered, and life was good, and the miller became a wealthy man. He lived in peace for years, enjoying life as he had planned. Here he had a wife, he had a son. Wondrously his journey had begun. And they made him promise, don't speak, as you can't tell a soul. There will be consequences. This you should know. The miller grew older and realized that now the time had come. The secret kept a generation now should be passed on. And a promise spoken can't be broken, that's the rule. This is why people say he had to fall. He was so lucky, he had it all. But then he threw it away. And they made him promise, don't speak, as you can't tell a soul. There would be consequences. This you should know. And so the fairies came along to curb and punish with a wicked spell. The mill was sealed, and that became the miller's dreaded cell. Jailed forevermore, that was his fate. Left all alone, he could not escape. 'Cause they made him promise, don't speak, as you can't tell a soul. There will be consequences. This you should know.
Next week we have a special treat as Danny G is here to tell you all about Captain Gallagher. Folk-a-Dilly Tales is a Zingaro Blue production. It was written, produced and edited by Mario and Lesley Price. Mixed by Frank Erlenkämper. My name is John Hales and I've been your host. Our storyteller this week was Chris Richardson. The poem was read by Lesley Price. Additional voices by Mario and Lesley Price. The contents of this podcast are based on the book Folk Stories, Legends and Poems by Mario and Lesley Price and are available as a book and an e-book from Amazon under the name Folk Stories, Legends and Poems. The music can be found under that same name and as volumes 1 and 2 streaming on all major platforms. Today's background music was supplied by Scott Buckley. You can find the link to these compositions in the comments below. Be sure to check out our music videos that tell some of our stories on YouTube. For more information about Zingaro Blue, visit our website at www.zingaroblue.co.uk or find additional links in the comments section. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please hit the follow button so that you can listen to the next episode of Folk-a-Dilly Tales. Thanks for listening.